Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session. I know it's Sunday. That's why we have tried to keep it in the morning itself so you guys can spend your good weekend and I can give you your rest of the day. As we saw a last session 3 weeks back from Aishwarya, which was the first session about the serverless, where we talk about the things like step function, Fargate, and kickstarted our series of this serverless stuff. Today we are back with our another interesting stuff, right? To see how exactly what are the different the services in serverless stack can help you to build around like the backend APIs, the authentication, and other stuff. And I have a wonderful speaker today with us, a renowned person when it comes to the entire serverless community. I'll keep that surprise. Let's see who is exactly that person. Before we go ahead, let me talk about this is a 4 series session. We are in the second episode. There are 2 more episodes lined up, and those 2 will be done by our AWS heroes, experts, and very renowned in each of the topics. So please do follow us, stay tuned, and do make sure that you join a session. And if you don't be worried. We have all of our session been recorded and preserved on AWS User Group India YouTube channel. So log in today, search for serverless session, and you will get all our previous episodes in case if you're looking around it. And again, feel free to put your questions, comments in the chat. It's about this event. It's about how to begin your career in serverless or AWS. Our speaker is very renowned for his career advice too. So he'll be happy to help you out. And if you're watching this video in a recording form, post your question in the comment. I'll ensure that I'll get all your answers, all your questions answered by the speaker and by me. So that's from it. Let me not waste much more of time and let the speaker on the stage. So today we have with us is Jonas. He is a senior advocate developer at Freshworks, AWS community builder, and recently he also gave a talk at the AWS Summit India 2022. So let me get Jonas on the stage. Hey Jonas, how are you doing today?
Hey Sanchit, I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing good, great. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and giving your spending your valuable time from your weekend for our audiences and participants.
It's always a pleasure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome.
Thank you. And I think this is our first session where we have you for AWS User Group Mumbai, Nashik, and Pune, right? You have given a multiple talk in AWS user groups, but not for these 3 groups, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So first time here and excited. Yep.
Yep. No, we are excited too. And thank you so much once again, to spend your weekend with us and helping us to learn about the serverless. I won't wait much of your time, and let me bring up your screen so you can go ahead. So yeah, your screen is live and up, and I'll request once again, if you have any questions, queries, please put it in the chat, Jonas, and I'll be happy to answer about it. That's all from my side. I'll pass on the control to Jonas for the session, and I'll be in the backstage. If you have any questions, put in the chat. I'll make a note of it, and as and when there is an interval, I'll pass on all of your questions to Jonas. That's all from my side. Jonas, over to you.
Thank you, Sanchit. So hi, everybody. Good morning. So today we'll be speaking about building APIs with AppSync. So before we get started, a little about me. I'm a senior developer advocate at Freshworks. I'm a AWS community builder. I do a lot of serverless advocacy. So most of you might have seen a lot of sessions from me over the social media. And like Sanchit was mentioning, recently I gave a talk at AWS Summit India 2022. And also I'm a hobbyist baker and a photographer. So today we'll be looking into what AWS Amplify is, how Amazon Cognito helps with authentication and authorization. And we'll also look into GraphQL, because that's one of the important aspects of how AppSync is using for building out APIs, right? And also we'll have a dive into AppSync, and we'll be looking into the basics of VTL with a demo followed with Amplify CLI. So first, coming to what is AWS Amplify. Amplify is a framework for front-end web and mobile applications, where mobile developers or front-end developers, basically, they can get started with, or they can start building their own backend with Amplify framework. And also, it's not only for backend purposes, but it's also helpful for building out front-end functionalities, where AWS Amplify provides a lot of capabilities in terms of building out different different AWS resources and spinning them around in terms of how you're configuring your Cognito with all the authorization parameters, and also building out your APIs, be it GraphQL based or REST APIs. Also, you can do a lot of web hosting that's available there, powered by S3 and CloudFront. So Amplify also recently announced about Amplify Studio, which is a console for developers to configure and allocate all their AWS resources, all from a different console out of AWS console, so that they can provide access to different users. And in terms of building out a CMS application, you can give access to certain users who can create content and deploy them. And also you can modify configurations of your different categories, so that you don't have to go to AWS console and do it. Instead, you can do it from Amplify Studio console itself. Also, Amplify provides a lot of UI components, which can be helpful in building out your applications. So you don't have to go through the hassle of building out a UI, building integration with the backend. Instead, what Amplify provides is it has a predefined UI components where you can take those UI components, plug it into your application, and let the component do all the magic of integrating and all the authorization with Cognito, or building out S3 based navigation, file navigations, all of those things. So Amplify also provides, like I mentioned, it provides a whole category of things. It's a whole menu of things in terms of authentication, storage. It has GraphQL-based APIs, REST APIs. There's a data store concept also, which can help you in synchronizing and storing data offline, so that your device or your mobile apps or your web applications, when they're out of when they're at a low network, or when there is no internet access, data is still available for your application to run, and it syncs in immediately as when data is available. Recently, AWS Amplify introduced Geo, which has all the location-based services, so that's available, and also analytics pops up, a whole lot of categories, which has specific or multiple AWS services in the background that's running. So you may not have to know the complete knowledge about that specific AWS service. Instead, you just have to know how Amplify provisions it and how Amplify packages it, so that you can use Amplify APIs or Amplify methods to start invoking all those AWS services. So this is a very brief about AWS Amplify. So in the demo, we'll be looking into how Amplify provides certain categories, and also we'll be walking through a little more things in terms of what configurations are available. So the next thing is AWS or Amazon Cognito. So when you're speaking about authentication and authorization, what happens is most often we would have to build authentication and authorization modules into our application ground up. Here, what Amazon Cognito does is it helps you with user management, identity management, and also synchronizing of data. So AWS or Amazon Cognito, what it does is it provides three specific offerings. One is Cognito User Pool, and Cognito Identity Pool, and Cognito Sync. All of these things help you with user management. So you can create your user pool, which has a pool of all the users in terms of all their data, into like username, emails, passwords. Of course, you don't have access to view the password, but Amazon Cognito helps in managing all those passwords in a very secure way. Also, you don't have to build the security aspect or in terms of how you're securing the password itself, because Cognito handles it and makes it very easy for backend developers to just provision for a Cognito pool with all the specifications that you need, like if you want to capture a username or a password, and email, if you want your email and your mobile number to be verified. Also, it supports SES and SNS based verifications, so that you know your user is a verified user. And also, you can have more custom attributes where you can say, I want to capture the user's address, or I want to capture the user's website. All these things are available as configurable attributes. This helps in capturing and storing data on Amazon Cognito. So whenever a user tries to authenticate with Cognito, what Cognito does, it returns a token, and this token has all these details. So you don't have to specifically capture all these things, store it on your own specific database, be it DynamoDB or RDS. You don't have to go through a hassle of provisioning all these extra things, so that it's already available in Amazon Cognito. And in terms of building out more customization on Cognito, Cognito offers a lot of Lambda triggers. So it has triggers for pre-authentication, post-authentication, and also things like whenever users trying to confirm or pre-sign up, where you can do a lot of your own business logic in terms of where Cognito triggers a Lambda function. From your Lambda function, you can do all your needed customized business logic. And also you can return the response back to the client, so that say for example you're trying to onboard a user who's for example has a subscription with Stripe, and the Stripe payment is still pending, so you're not allowing the user to move ahead. So all these kind of customization and validations you could do with Lambda triggers. And also if you want to build your own authentication flow, even that is supported with following OAuth standards. So Cognito also provides integration with popular social sign-ons, and also it has a SAML feature where you can integrate with your own authentication provider, and you can enable a single sign-on on your application with just a couple of clicks and a snippet of code. So coming to AppSync, first we would have to know what GraphQL is, because AppSync is based on GraphQL. GraphQL is an open source tool that was developed by Facebook and later made it as open source. So this is used for building out data queries and manipulation language for your APIs, where you define your complete data schema, and once you define your schema, you can even write a lot of queries or mutations in the language of GraphQL queries, or whatever you're trying to get from the database or from the server. Mutations or whatever the data change that you do to the server. And subscription is a real-time updates that is being sent whenever there's a data change, whenever there's a client or even a backend triggered mutation. Whenever there's a trigger on a mutation or a change in data, you get real-time updates with subscription. And also you can you can define your complete schema with specific data types, so that you know your complete schema is based on a specific, if you want to define a specific attribute or a key as integer, you could do it. If you want to build out complex objects as nested JSONs, you can do that. So all these is available as GraphQL capabilities, where you can see the snippet of code that I've mentioned, that as there's a schema which has a query and a mutation, right? So yeah. So coming to AppSync, AppSync is a serverless offering. So this is a managed serverless GraphQL offering by AWS, which is powered by the GraphQL server that I just explained about, in terms of how it's helpful for building out APIs. So AppSync provides a seamless integration with other AWS services. So if you have your data source as RDS or DynamoDB, it can easily integrate with them, and it can even fetch or write data from those data sources. Also, it's not limited to databases. You can, if you have, if you're in need to build an Elasticsearch or open search feature, where it can even integrate with AWS OpenSearch, and also things like you can invoke a Lambda function. you can even have your own pipeline of functions that's defined in AppSync in VTL language. So all these are available as series of functions. You can build out complex data sources. All of these things can be attached to either queries or mutations, or it could even be added to attributes of the response that you're getting. So that if you want to resolve multiple things, in the REST API world, you would have to call multiple APIs and get the data, and that has to be aggregated in a common source and returned, or it has to be aggregated at the front. So what GraphQL helps with is it helps you with defining a schema. And when you define a schema, you can add resolvers to specific parts of the schema. So say you're getting the user details and you want the user's organization details. So you have the org ID available in the user object. So from that org ID, you can resolve organization details, and you can return that in one query call. So this is something that AppSync provides in terms of adding resolvers to different attributes or queries or mutations, which can talk to different or multiple AWS services. So all of these things all the APIs from AppSync can be authenticated with either IAM policies, where you have a federated identity which has a specific authorization policy which allows the user to invoke AppSync. So you could do that, or the standard way of using API keys. This has certain limitations in terms of you want to specify the duration of the key, and also you have to ensure that whenever it's about to expire, you keep rotating the API keys. The other most common way is with Cognito user pool. So if your user is authenticated with Cognito, you can just integrate that with AppSync. So when you're using Amplify SDK, you don't have to go through an hassle of retrieving token from Cognito. You have to pass it to the AppSync API calls, all of that thing, but you can just initialize it in your Amplify SDKs. So all of these things is taken care by Amplify, making the life of front-end engineers really easy. Also, AppSync has a very good way of ensuring offline storage and caching. So Amplify itself provides a caching capability, which can be either caching at the server side or at the client side. And all of these data, once it's cached and once the online services are resumed, it synchronizes with the server. Also, AppSync provides a single API endpoint, whereas when you're trying to build REST API based APIs, you would have to call multiple resource paths, which is api.abc.com/products, api.abc.com/offerings, or something like that. You would have to use multiple such endpoints or resources for the specific domain. Here with AppSync, you don't have to do that. It's a common aggregated single endpoint, where with that endpoint, you would have to use a lot of queries and mutations to do different operations. So when it comes to how AppSync works, this is a screenshot from AppSync documentation, where it speaks about how different applications, it could be enterprise or mobile applications, it could be even IoT devices which is using AppSync in the background. So AppSync has the capabilities of GraphQL schema, introspection, and resolvers. All of these could be with different sources like Amazon DynamoDB, Aurora, for all your RDS-based relational databases. It could be even with Elasticsearch, that is open source service that's at the moment. And also AWS Lambda functions, HTTP endpoint. You could even have a local pops up even. So for your front-end engineers, if they're working with multiple such APIs, it could even resolve to a common HTTP endpoint, so that for the front-end engineer, it's a common API that they'll be calling, but in the background, it could be a HTTP API, or it could be a custom business logic, which is invoking lambda function, resolving things, doing a lot of things and returning. It could be even a pipeline function from AppSync, which could be a series of functions talking to different data sources, and it gets resolved and it comes back as one response. So all of these things are well integrated with AppSync whenever you're trying to make a query. So say your mobile application is trying to fetch it's trying to list all the products, for example. So it makes a query get all products. So AppSync has a query defined get all products, which has the data source as DynamoDB. So it uses DynamoDB, makes a query or a scan, whatever the VTL resolver is being defined. And from that resolver, you get all the data that's returned from DynamoDB to your AppSync, from AppSync to your client. So making things much easier. And also in terms of performance, AppSync has a very defined performance in terms of how well or how fast it can retrieve data and process things. So making your application performance really good, because it's all happening at a very fast pace. And whenever you're trying to make queries, all the data when it's received in your front end, it could even be cached with AppSync capabilities itself, so that whenever you're trying to load it, it can use the cache first, and if cache is available, it loads the data. In the background, it's trying to get new data, and once that data is available, it fetches and updates your front end. So for the user experience of your application, users don't have to see a loader that's happening, and they don't have to wait for a longer period of time. Instead, they have a data that's available, but there's also updated data that can sync up really soon. And of course, whenever you're working with AppSync, all the logs are available in CloudWatch. And recently, even AppSync added a VTL capability of adding consoles to your CloudWatch logs, so that if you're trying to debug, it's a huge win for AppSync developers, because in terms of debugging VTL, it's always been a hard route for developers. So AppSync making this announcement in terms of adding consoles helps in debugging purpose for developers, in terms of if they check certain things are returned or not. All that is available in your CloudWatch log, and it's all available in a moment of time. So coming back to speaking about the schema, AppSync schema, or the GraphQL capabilities, are that you can define your own schema, which has all these certain things. Like it can have queries, it can have mutations, subscriptions, it can have different input objects that's defined. So you're just using that input object, and you can even make response objects to be of a different specific type. So your schema of your response is very well defined. You can even have enumerated data types. So say, for example, you have different statuses like active, deactive. You don't have to go with string values. Instead, you can define a enum type for it, and that could be returned as a response. You can also create a lot of directives, or you can use the existing directives that's available. So you can see in the snippets that I've added, there's a type of task with different attributes, and there's an exclamation mark, ensuring that these are the attributes that are mandatory. So whenever you're trying to get an object of type task, ID, owner, title, and description is a must. So if it's not available in your database, AppSync throws an error. So all these pre-pilot validations are done at AppSync, so ensuring that you don't have to write a lot of validation either on your front end or on your back end. Also, when you can see in the query snippet that I've added in the slide, there's a directive called as AWS_auth. So here we can even mention if a user who is authenticated with Cognito pool belongs to a specific Cognito group. So say you want to access control your applications, ensuring that all the tasks should be fetched only by managers. So you can see there's a query that is all tasks, and the AWS auth directive mentions the Cognito group that has to be that the user has to be part of is manager group. So say, for example, if an employee group user is trying to log in and trying to call this query, the authentication itself throws an error, and all you don't have access to call all these queries or mutation. So again, coming all these directives create a resolver of VTL type, and these have a predefined or bootstrapped code available for users. So you don't have to really write a logic of, say, so you don't have to really write a logic where you have the user's role or a group that's available in your DynamoDB or RDS, and you have to check, okay, if this user is part of manager group or employee group. You don't have to do that. Instead, you could just use Cognito and Cognito groups, add these directives, and let AppSync take care of the most of the access control. So when we speak about AppSync, VTL is one thing that always pops up. It's the elephant of the room, and let's look into the elephant in the room. So VTL is a velocity template language. This is based out of Java, so you could identify that most of the things that's running on it is based on Java. All the VTL comes into place when we are speaking about resolvers. So resolvers could be of either input resolver or your response resolver, where you want to resolve certain things that's coming from AppSync to your data source, and whatever's coming from your data source to AppSync, all the resolving and formatting that you would have to do is available with VTL. So you don't have to really write custom logic again. So say, for example, if you have certain things in your DynamoDB which don't have to be sent or presented the way it has to be, you can format it the way you need it in response resolvers and return it to AppSync. And all of these resolving is done in VTL language. Again, coming to, there's different types of resolvers that your attributes or queries or mutations that can have. Those are unit resolvers, and there is pipeline resolvers. So unit resolvers work with a single data source in terms of it just does one operation for your query or a mutation. It's just doing that specific operation, and whenever you're going with the standard data sources, it gives you a bootstrap code so that you don't have to really write your own logic, but there's a bootstrap code available. You can edit it, or most of the times, if it's a simple get or a query, you have the bootstrap code available there. And also, in terms of pipeline resolvers, you can create multiple functions, and each of those functions is talking to a specific data source. So you can see in the diagram to the right, there's a two-function pipeline resolver where there's something that's happening before the template, and there's a function that's talking to a specific data source. Once you get the response back, the response template resolves certain things, puts it into a stash, and from the stash, you can even access it with the next function. And all of these, again, speak to a different data source. And you, again, have a after template so that you want to aggregate a lot of things, put things in place or format things in place before it goes into your response. All of that could also be done with AppSync pipeline resolvers, and it's returning your complete response to your front end as a Kafka response. So this is a bootstrap code, what VTL provides in terms of put item action for DynamoDB. So you can see that it pre-populates whatever your key condition attributes are for that data source, and also it adds things like to DynamoDB JSON utility functions so that you can format things the way DynamoDB requires, and also it's adding all the arguments from your context, so you don't have to really go and write this complete of code. In case you want more attributes, you can add them. But again, for most use case where you just want to do simple things, the Bootstrap code is very well suited for that option. So now let's look into a demo with Amplify CLI and how we provision all these things to get a better understanding of. So yes, Sanchit, if you can just let me know if this font size is
Yep,
good.
this is good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so in terms of when we're doing it with the CLI, I have a pre-installed Amplify CLI on Cloud9 instance that's running. So all I have to do is Amplify init, and you would have to enter a name. So let me go with demo. And it gives you a predefined thing saying, okay, this is a dev environment. It even saying what's your editor, what language you're using, what are the build and script commands that's available. And once you confirm, it tries to provision all these things in your in your AWS account. So let me just add file. So let me go with US East 1. And what Amplify does is it leverages CloudFormation in the background, and it's trying to create a stack with all the needed things in terms of for deploying it. Deploying it requires a S3 bucket. It's creating IAM roles. All of these things is authorized. All of these things has been provisioned by CloudFormation. So while this is done, Sanchit, we can take some questions while the whole provisioning happens.
Sure. So we have one question. I think you mentioned about the query logs, right? So there's a question is, can we do analytics on the query logs using Athena?
Uh, yeah, maybe in terms of if you have a way to programmatically sync all your CloudWatch logs into an S3 bucket, you can use Athena to query it. But again, it's a very new feature that's come out in terms of logging all your things into CloudWatch in terms of having your own specific log utility function what AppSync provides. So I mean, I've not used this kind of a feature, but technically it's possible in terms of if you have a way of programmatically syncing your logs to S3 bucket and using Athena to query it.
Thanks. And yeah, just to add what Jonas mentioned, right? That's a normal use case of doing an analytics on the logs, log analytics, which is provided by CloudWatch. So as Jonas just mentioned, right, it's not about AppSync. It's about any service like ELB logs you talk about or any other logs. If you can sync all those CloudWatch logs, you can use something called as lake formation and those kinds of services to process it, apply some security, or you can directly deploy Athena also on the logs and you can do log analytics kinds of stuff. So that's about more from a CloudWatch with Athena integration per se. But AppSync, you have to just ensure that any services that you talk about, AppSync, Lambda, Fargate, if you get the logs in the CloudWatch, you can have the CloudWatch sync to S3 and do an Athena on top of it.
So now back to the demo.
Sorry, there's
Any
one more question.
questions?
Yeah, there's one more question we have. Can we integrate with API gateway or any other conflict with AppSync?
Um, I mean, there is a HTTP endpoint where you could use the API endpoint that you get from AWS API Gateway, but I'm not sure what the use case is when you have AppSync for your API provider for your front end application. You don't have to specifically add multiple such APIs. This just makes the applications integration point of view hard, because it's very you would have to talk with multiple such APIs, right? So yeah.
Cool. There's one more follow-up question what we have from Shri. This specific issue. I had an issue with Amplify. The issue was Amplify build failed with already exist exception, bucket exist. I was wondering if you ever have faced something like this.
Okay, so you might have noticed that when I did Amplify init, it created a deployment bucket. So when you're creating different environments, all these environments has a specific S3 buckets in the background that's provisioned. So what could have probably gone wrong is your environment is trying to recreate a S3 bucket, or maybe you try to create a app before with a specific environment. So the S3 bucket is available, so it cannot create a new one with the same name, because all your S3 buckets have to have a unique name. Probably you could introduce another environment, or if you have a way, if you're sure that that S3 bucket is not used for any other purpose or for any other application, you can delete that S3 bucket and probably redo the Amplify build process. So Shri, hope that I'm not sure how you resolved it, but probably these are some of the steps that you could take to resolve this.
Yeah, I think, Jonas, that's the question what we have from the audiences. And don't worry, if you have more questions, please put in the chat. We have Jonas here again, so don't hesitate. If you have any, like how Sri come up with a specific incident, what he have faced, specific question of troubleshooting. If you have any questions about AppSync, Cognito, or Lambda, feel free to put in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah. So back to the demo now. We initialized our project with Amplify. The next step is to add authorization. So when we say when we're using add auth, it's using the authorization or the auth category with Cognito, and you can even provision things like if it's a social sign provider with a federated identity, or you would just want to go with default configuration. For the demo, we'll go with default configuration. We can even have the users to sign in with specific things. It could be email or mobile number, or it could be both. Or you could have a specific username also for the user. So let me go with username, and this is good for the very bootstrapped demo. But you can even configure things in terms of creating your own federated identity and resolving things in terms of if the user is trying to log in from, say, Google or Twitter, GitHub, all these things is available. So once we create auth, the next step is to create the API section. So Amplify and API, where the CLI walks through things like if it is a GraphQL-based API or REST API. Let's go with GraphQL. It even created a name for the API based on the project name that we gave, and also it has a default authorization mode with API key with 7 days of expiration. We could go with Cognito user pool, and we say if you want additional authorization types, we could even have say yes. It could be API key, and whenever you're trying to when we're trying to do syncing is done with data store. So whenever there's data store, you want to do conflict detection. That is possible with the GraphQL API. So in this demo, we are not using data store, so we'll leave it at disabled. And also in terms of getting started with AppSync, it provides you with some standard templates that's available. So whenever you're doing, if it's a simple to-do list, it could be a single object. If it's one-to-many relationships, like a blog with different posts, comments, things like that, even that is possible. It has even the fine-grained access, what I was mentioning with the snippet of code earlier. In this demo, we'll just go with blank. We'll go with single object, and we'll edit the schema later on. So when you can see that when I'm using the simple template that AppSync provides, it's warning me, telling that these APIs are accessible by anybody who's authenticated with Cognito. So it's suggesting me to use the @auth directive, where I can mention my own rules and making it more access controlled. So let me say no. And all these schema can be uploaded to our specific AWS account with just Amplify push. So when you're trying to do Amplify push, it's telling you what environment you're currently working on. So it's dev, and what are the new things that it's been pushing to the cloud. So here we created a new auth category with a Cognito pool and also a GraphQL API that's been created. So it's telling these are things that are new, and it's create, and it's asking for a confirmation to proceed. Let me create an API key. And you can even specify the number of days your API key should be valid for. So let me go with 2 days. It's even asking for a command where you can generate your code once it's deployed. This helps in terms of when you're building out front-end applications. You can use a amplify code gen command where it uses the endpoint and tries to fetch the latest schema from AppSync and downloads it to your local development environment, and it also generates files based on the language that you choose. So let me go with JavaScript. It's asking for, do you want to segregate all your queries, mutations, subscriptions, and everything as different files? So I'll go with yes. And it's asking for to update or generate all the things. Let me go nested too. So in case if you're working with complex type objects which has nested JSONs, you can even mention the level of nestedness. So I mentioned it as 2, but it could even go to a point where you have multiple nesting, and you can mention the levels there, so that based up to that level is what Amplify allows. So in case if your application is returning more levels, it errors out. So, any questions that we could take?
Yeah,
I see a comment from Sri. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, there is a follow-up comment. We don't have access to the bucket as it created internally by AWS. I think there's a follow-up on the previous question.
Okay. Yeah. So ideally, it should be listing if it's in that specific AWS account. What I could understand from your previous question and this is that it's probably a different environment in a different account. So, say for example, your S3 bucket name is ABC Dev. That name for the bucket is global in terms of AWS, and it has to be unique globally, right? So it's not allowing you to create another ABC dev in a different account. I mean, that could be one of the possible things that's there. But generally, when it's creating a S3 bucket, I could navigate into S3 and So these are some of the things that I was trying to create, and this is the deployment bucket that Amplify created, where I can access it from my S3 console, and I could modify the bucket, but generally doing things will break for Amplify because you're doing it out of the Amplify ecosystem, right? So uh, generally things break, but if you don't have access to this, or you don't find it in S3, it probably means it's not in the right AWS account, or your IAM user is not authorized to view all those buckets. Any other questions? Sanjay?
No, no, I think I don't see any other new questions.
Okay, so let's. While this is being deployed, I was doing the same thing with a different application in terms of how it could be integrated with a front-end application. So what I did is I used a specific schema, and I used the at auth and at model directives. So what at model directive does is when you're creating a schema, you generally have to have a data source which the queries and mutations are speaking to. So in terms of the schema, you don't have to, in terms of Amplify and creating a new schema, you don't have to generally go create your specific DynamoDBs or create basic CURD operations, right? So at model directive does this for you, where it uses the uh, attributes from the type that's been mentioned as so ID is being one of the identifiers, so it uses that as the uh, primary key of your DynamoDB, and it provisions for a DynamoDB table in that specific AWS environment, and also creates certain queries, mutations, and subscriptions. So when I deployed this specific schema, it auto created or auto generated these three mutations, where I'm able to create a post, update a post, and delete a post with specific inputs that's already available. And it also added certain conditions to ensure that the name is not duplicating or things like that. And you can see in the demo that I was trying to run at the moment, uh, CloudFormation update or create is completed, and it even generated a GraphQL endpoint. So this is a common single endpoint that I was speaking of earlier. And along with it, it created a API key also, which I created in the CLI process with 2 days of expiration. So for front-end engineers, they could use these specific things and initialize their Amplify and get things done. So here what I've done is I've used another front-end application. In this front-end application, so in this is a front-end application which is similar to Instagram, where users can post their pictures and view it and things like that. So what this is doing is it's using the post uh, type of schema in terms of identifying a new post with a uniquely generated ID, and also it has name, location, description, image, which is the S3 bucket, S3 objects URL, and also it has a owner to make it more access controlled. So in terms of auth itself, you're allowing the users, whoever is marked as the owner for the object, to perform actions in terms of updating it or deleting it. But things like things or the users who don't have access to it, for the public users, only the operations with terms of queries to read the object is available. So these kind of access modeling is also done with Amplify. So with that specific schema, it created a get post, list post queries, and also a subscription is auto-generated in terms of whenever there's a new post, if you want to get a real-time update, even that is available on delete and on update. So all the three mutations that's being auto-generated has its equivalent subscriptions available. Okay, so a quick rundown of this application is this is a React-based application which is using Amplify UI components. What it provides for React in terms of building out authentication and certain UI components for your S3 uploads also. So in this React application, what I've done is I've used with authenticator React UI component. So what I would have to do is I've just export this UI with authenticator UI component, so that whenever I'm trying to launch my application, it uses the UI component for authentication, and it integrates with Cognito for doing things like sign in and sign up processes. So I'll have the app running in some time, and you can see that in the specific app, I didn't have to create this UI, where the UI component from Amplify allows me to do sign in and create account. The authorization flow for both is handled along with forgot password. Along with this, what I've also done is added certain files where it's creating or listing queries. So whenever we're trying to do a query and do a get operation, so since get can be authenticated by publicly, you can just do a get. And this is a standard way of doing things in terms of API GraphQL. You're specifying the name, which is exported from the queries file that is auto-generated. And you can even pass certain variables that specific query requires. And once it is even getting the S3 image using storage. So storage is another category from Amplify, which is talking to S3 in terms of how or where all these things will be fetched from. And for create post, you can see that all these things are taken from the input, name, description, location, image, and image upload is being done to S3 with storage put, and this returns an S3 URL. This is used for putting a new DynamoDB record with create post. So whenever we are doing create post, we're even mentioning auth mode, so that for this API, when we're using create requires authentication in terms of who is doing it, and also giving them the owner access control, right? So for that, we're using the Cognito user pool authentication. And we have an owner attribute. So the owner's name is fetched from Cognito, where we are mentioning the user's name in Cognito, fetching that from a current authenticated user auth capability, and that has been added to the owners as a tag, so that whenever we are trying to make modifications, we know that only the owner is allowed to do modifications. So here, yeah. So whenever we are trying to create or initialize Amplify, this is a common configuration JSON that's being auto-generated whenever we add an API or add authentication, and all these things are the configurations from the CLI. So if you had this is for a different project which I've done previously, but if you remember from the CLI walkthrough that we had right now, the different it could be AWS region or the GraphQL endpoint, the API key, the S3 bucket where it's storing all the data. It could be even the Cognito user pool ID and what are the attribute it requires, what's the password policy. All this thing is available as a configuration JSON. And this configuration JSON is what is being initialized uh, uh, in your Amplify whenever you're trying to initialize your complete project. So let's get to the project. So let's create our account. So I'm using Mailinator for a disposable email. So you can see that the UI component even validates so that the confirm password and your password fields are matching. So whenever I try to create an account, following the basic create account auth flow what Cognito provides, it creates the user and it wants the user to verify their email address. So it triggers an email based OTP so that user can use that OTP to confirm themselves. So once this is done, it logs into the application, and this is a sample application that I did, and with since listing of all the posts is available by all users. These are the posts that is created by another user that I was testing around with, where the post is available. So in case if you want to create a post, you can add uh, demo one, demo, demo. Okay. We don't have a image that's available, so let me just save a image. So whenever I try to click on create new post, you can see that from the code walkthrough that we did, there was a S3 put object, and from that put URL was resolved, and it created a DynamoDB record. So all of that is with a create post mediation call. In the background, once it was done, it even refreshed this complete page to list all the posts. So here I can see all the posts by all the users. And when I go to my posts, it lists the posts that I had recently uploaded. Okay, something's wrong there. Uh, so when we are creating this front-end application, uh, all these applications, it took me just a couple of minutes to build this out because I used the standard Amplify UI components that's available. So you could see that for authentication, I was mentioning, I went with Authenticator app, and for the sign-in option, what we had to do was we just had to define on sign out method for the function, and this is taken care by the amplify auth function itself. And also in terms of building out S3, so S3 also has different methods in terms of putting and getting. That is using Amplify storage functions. So in terms of a front end developer to get started with a lot of things, uh, with with a backend provision, uh, in terms of be it DynamoDB, be it a storage on S3, and be it authorization with Cognito, it's really simple. You just have to walk through the CLI steps, and also whenever this is done, it auto generates certain files that you need in terms of the GraphQL queries, mutations, subscriptions itself. So you can start importing them in your code and start using them. And also Amplify as okay. So Amplify Studio also provisions for ways to get started with. So in terms of when you're trying to use Amplify and you don't want your users, if it's a CMS based application, you want to give your users access to AWS account for creation of content and all those things, so that you can start creating. You can start provisioning users access to Amplify Studio, from where they can create content and publish them. When once published, it even runs it through. It even publishes it to DynamoDB, and it's available for your queries and your front end applications to be used. So Amplify Studio, a brief overview about it is it it gives you an overview of what your Amplify app is doing. So this is the demo that I was showing you with Postgram application. So there's a dev environment, and in the dev environment, there's certain things that is defined in terms of authentication. There's a Cognito pool that's defined. So it's telling it's deployed, and it'll describe the details that it has. So, okay. Okay. So in terms of GraphQL API, also it tells which is a GraphQL API that's being used, and in terms of your development perspective, you can even pull this complete Amplify project, make changes, and update this API so that this complete environment gets updated, and any user who's has access to any developer in specific who has access to this environment can pull that and get started. So Amplify also helps with building out team-based environments for development purposes. So, in terms of the end user perspective, for using it for management purposes, it allows you to navigate or list all your users who are being created on the app. So it's basically doing get all users from Cognito user pool, and also your S3 based bucket. It tries to navigate through all the files that's available. It's taking some while to load. Okay. Okay. So in terms of developer experience, also it tells you what are the latest things it has done in terms of a cloud formation update stack, and what are the things it deployed and when did it deploy. These are just cloud formation logs that's available, so that you can know, okay, there was an Amplify a Postgram dev environment that was created, and it was this time, all of those details. It even gives you an overview of, okay, data model is deployed, there is a Cognito auth that's being deployed, all the overview of things. So yeah, let's that's about the demo. uh, so coming to the next aspect of things, when we're working with uh, VTL. So you might have seen in one of the snippet of code that I was sharing, there was a DynamoDB based utility function. So it's not limited to DynamoDB helper functions, but it also has a lot of helpers with terms of it could be JSON and string parsing, it could be generating unique IDs. So recently, AppSync announced KSUID support, which is time-based sorted unique identifiers. So this helps in building out your own DynamoDB models, where you don't have to have a combinational of partition key and sort key, where you're sorting all of the records by sort created at or created on kind of a field. Instead, you can use the unique ID itself to sort it based on the time and retrieve data. Also, when you're working with a lot of date and time, utility functions are available for creating ISO-based time strings or epoch-based timestamps. All of these are available as helper functions. Also, when you're working with DynamoDB JSON uses a very marshaled way of JSONs for all the values. So when you're getting data in a specific attribute, you have to resolve it or you have to convert things that DynamoDB understands. So DynamoDB helper functions are used for that, where you're mapping things to a JSON or you're converting a common string to a JSON of type string. All of these are available as helper functions. The next aspect is always about, I believe there was a comment also about can we use AppSync with API Gateway? In terms of having it as an HTTP endpoint, you could do it, but there's always an added advantage when you're using AppSync. So I mentioned that when you're using AppSync, why would you want to go with API Gateway, right? So the things about AppSync is it's a very front-end friendly. So you know that when you're creating queries or mutations, it creates or it auto generates file for you so that you can just pick up the query from that auto generated file, add them out. And one of the other best feature about AppSync is you get only what you request, or you whenever you're requesting certain data with AppSync, say I want only the name of the user, I don't want his date of birth or his address. All of these things could be avoided, and it could be when you're requesting for a response, you can mention it in your response type, so that when AppSync is returning it, it ensures it's returning only for the things that you're requested for. So when you're working with AppSync, you have a series of data, or it's a huge payload of data that's usually coming in with REST APIs. And most of the times, as front-end developers may not need all the attributes. So you can optimize your complete payload itself for a better performance by requesting for the things that you need, and Amplify and AppSync takes care about ensuring that you get only for the things that you get. Also, it has a very easy integration with Cognito user pool. So I was mentioning that in the export, I just have to mention that this specific mutation is authenticated with Cognito user pool, right? So it's that simple to ensure that a specific mutation is authenticated with Cognito pool. The rest of them could be public with using API key in the background. But in terms of integrating with Cognito user pool for authentication is very simple when compared with API gateway. And also when you're creating access control, I gave a walkthrough with the auth directive that's available, where we can specify specific user groups, Cognito user groups, where the user belongs to, for providing them access to a specific query or a mutation. In terms of doing this with API gateway, it is always hard because you would have to ensure that you would have to write your own business logic to do all of these things. But here in AppSync, it's available as a native feature. And all the pre-pilot validations of be it your input or your response is handled by AppSync. So whenever you're trying to call a query or a mutation with a specific input, and that input does not match the data type that we have defined, AppSync itself throws an error before it even hitting the server. So your data sources are always sanitized in terms of getting the right data the right way it requires. And real-time subscriptions are supported by WebSocket, and these are also really powerful in terms of the SDK API SDK itself ensures reconnection and establishing the connection, ensuring the connection is alive. All of these things is handled by the SDK itself. You wouldn't have to manually go ensure, okay, for whatever reasons my WebSocket got disconnected, I would have to manually go and reconnect and ensure the connection is alive. All these things, all this hassles is also being cut down with AppSync. Of course, all the APIs are supported with WAF for security purposes. You can enable WAF on your AppSync, and you could even have your own custom domains with AppSync, making it all the more secure and better over API gateway. So there are different ways to build your AppSync APIs. AWS Console is one of the easiest ways to get started, where you can navigate to AppSync Console, use a specific schema, and define your complete schema, add resolvers, all the things from the console. But it's also easier with Amplify CLI, the demo that we just had. SAM or serverless application model, and CDK supports creation of AppSync because it defines a schema, uses CloudFormation in the background to translate it into a stack with different schema, resolvers, all the things, and deploy them to the cloud. That's mostly about the session where you got to learn about Amplify, got a brief overview about authentication with Cognito, understanding the basics about VTL and how AppSync uses GraphQL, and of course, the benefits of AppSync over REST API. So, Sanchit, I see a couple of comments. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So I'll first take up a quick questions. I think there are a couple of questions what we have. The first question is, what does VTL means?
Okay. It's a velocity template language where I was mentioning earlier.
Okay, cool.
Yes, probably I can just show what that looks like. So this is a VTL based function where you could do a lot of things. So since it's using auth based authentication for all the queries and mutation, it created a pipeline resolver. So it's speaking to one none type of a data source where it's checking if the user is authenticated with API key or Cognito, and if it's with Cognito, if the user has a owner role or not. All these attributes are checked with the pipeline resolver, and also it's doing a specific DynamoDB based query to get the user get the records from DynamoDB itself. So all these functions that you see is written with VTL. This is a velocity template language that it's powered with Java. Yeah.
Cool. Moving to the next question, is Amplify Studio open source or proprietary? Sorry if I have missed it, if you have told earlier.
Yeah, so it's owned by Amplify team, so it's kind of proprietary to Amplify team itself. It's not open source.
Cool. So yeah, I think those were the two questions what we had, Jonas.
Awesome.
Cool. So I'll request the audience, if you have more questions, please put it in the chat. We'll be happy to answer. Jonas is still with us for a couple of more minutes. So if you have any questions, not just with limited to AppSync, Cognito or Amplify, if you have any other questions about SQS, SNS, Lambda, Fargate, please put the question in the chat. We'll take it up as soon as the quiz is done. So with that, I'll thank you, Jonas. Thank you so much for giving that wonderful session, packed up with a couple of good demos. And it's really amazing to cover up AppSync, Amplify, Cognito, and end-to-end functionality in a short duration. We really appreciate that you took out the time and spend your quality weekend with us to give us this demo. I would request you to please stay with us and see how our participants are doing with your session from the quiz. I mean, you're not allowed to answer the questions, but for sure, we'll request you to stay with us. So uh,
Sure,
I'll
Sanjit. Sure.
introduce you
Thank
with
you.
us
Yeah.
for the moment. Let me get Abhishek Wagh, who is the AWS User Group Lead for Nasik, and Pushkar, who is the co-organizer for AWS User Group Nasik. They will help us to play the quiz. This quiz is hosted on uh, this quiz will be based on the questions what we had in today's session around AppSync as well as Amplify and those kinds of stuff. So let me get them on the stage. Hey Abhishek, Pushkar, are you there?
Hi, yeah. Hi, Sanchit.
Hey
Thank you.
everyone.
Hello. So I'll pass on the control to you guys. Jonas and I'll be on the backstage, so you can go ahead with the quiz. And yeah, guys, please participate in the quiz. We'll have all the three top winners will get an AWS credit like we have done last time in the session. For in the first episode, we'll do this similar. We'll have the three winners for the quiz, and the top three winners will get an AWS credits. So please do participate and try to answer the questions. All the answer questions are very simpler and based on this today's session itself. So do interactively participate. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. We'll be happy to answer after the quiz.
Sanchit, can you share the link for the quiz in the chat so that people can, start getting in?
Sure. Can you give? Yeah, give me one.
Okay, hope all you guys learned something new today from the session. And now it's quiz time. Sanchit will share the link. Okay, Sanchit already shared the link in the chat box. So we have mainly 5 questions. So 20 seconds for each question. Use Chrome for a better experience. We'll wait for 2 minutes for everybody to sign up. And as Sanchit mentioned, you can post your question in meantime in the chat section. As the quiz gets started, we'll show the leaderboard and top three people will get the AWS credit to perform your side project and everything.
And once the quiz gets started, we'll be able to, show you the leaderboard also so that you can see uh, at which position you stand.
Yeah. So we can see zero folks have joined. So I would urge everyone, please do log in now and join the quiz.
Once
Once
you
you
click on a quiz link, right? So we'll have to sign in so that, we will be able to see who all are participants. Now I can see three people have signed in, and we are waiting for more people to join so that we can start our quiz. So request everybody to sign in to play the quiz, and then we can get started. We'll wait for a few more minutes, and once we start the quiz, you can join, but you can miss the questions, so that, and it's just 5 questions, so it's fastest finger first type, so you won't want to miss any questions.
Okay, three are here. how to? Yeah, you can just log in and sign up. Click on the link and try.
Yeah, once you click on the link, you will see the sign in to play button. And once you click on that, you will be, given a interface to join the quiz. Yeah, now able to see 6 participants. So I think people are joining now. Now we will wait for 1 more minute and we'll get started. Okay, guys, 10 seconds more and we'll have to start the quiz. Good. Let's start it then. So on your screen, you will be seeing the first question in next 5 seconds. And you have 20 seconds to answer each question.
Leaderboard will take a few seconds to re- reflect all the progress.
Yep. So the time's up and we can see the stats on the screen also. So I see only one participant out of 8 given the correct answer. Yeah. So we'll be moving up to the next question in 5 seconds on your screen. Okay. So you should be able to see the stats for this question. As I can see, the 5 participant, which is 50% of total participants, have given the correct answer. Okay, so moving up to the next question.
Okay, Ramakrishna is on top with two right answers. Sridhar and Akshit followed by.
Okay, 4 people have given the correct answer for this question, question number 3rd. And now we are moving for the 4th question. Okay, so 3 participants were able to give correct answer. Now it's the last question, guys. So be quick and give correct answers to switch up to the leaderboard. So presenting the last question. Yep. So 2 participants have given the correct answer for the last question, and as it showing on the leaderboard, Ram Krishna is still on the leaderboard, but the leaderboard might take some time to refresh and properly give the correct leaderboard. So uh, yeah, we'll wait, and you can also see on the same link once we end the quiz.
Yeah, Sridhar is on top with 3 question answer.
Yeah, the leaderboard will still take some time refresh, and but you can see on the same link you can see the leaderboard also, and it will stay there, so you can refer it. So yeah, as I'm seeing, Sridhar is on top, Akshit is on second place, in third place I'm seeing Ramakrishna. So the top 3 people will be given $20 AWS credits, and our team will reach out to you with our official email, and you'll get your coupon code.
Cool. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what an interesting quiz. Uh, yeah, I think many people got two or correct answer. That's a very good question, I would say. The ranking when there is a tie in the number of question is based on the timings. As you can see, there is a very thin line in seconds. There is a difference based on the timing itself. Also, the answers have been calculated. So you'll see the ranking even though you have given a two right answers, but there's a timing that matters here. So that's why
Correct.
you might the timing based on the rankings are different. So that's the case. And yeah, Shri, I agree. I didn't play the question. I was logged in to see the leaderboard. So don't worry. This is a fair one. So yeah, that's what we have from the quiz perspective. I would urge back. I think there are a couple of questions which we have seen here in terms of can you share the VLT code? Can you share your code which you have demoed? VTL code, sorry, and can you share the codes, the login app, and those kinds of stuff? Yes, for sure. Just give us some time. By end of today, the presentation as well as the code which got demonstrated, all of that will package it up, put it into GitHub link. And that same link of the repository, I'll put it in the comments of this particular video on all the channels of AWS User Group India YouTube channel, AWS User Group Nashik YouTube channel, as well as AWS User Group Pune YouTube channel. So from which of the user groups you do have logged into it, you can see that, go around it, try this out, watch the video. And still, if you have any questions, please reach out to Jonas and me and rest of the organizers. We'll be happy to take that up. So that's what we have from today's session. And thank you so much for being a wonderful participant and very interactive. I am pretty sure Jonas would have not regretted to spend time. He would have loved spending his weekend with us. And with that, I want to announce two more sessions what we have as a part of this series. The next one is focused on DynamoDB. And I know the best person to give that session will be Anurag Kale, who's a data hero AWS and very recognized for his for his speak around DynamoDB and modeling around it. So we'll have Anurag for our third session. Please do follow us. We'll come up with the time, the schedule, and the link of the event. So do subscribe us and follow us for the same. And the last conclusion session will be done by another serverless hero. So do subscribe us and follow us. With that, I'll try to wrap this session. Thank you so much for spending your time from this wonderful weekend and stay safe. I'll look forward for your active participants in the upcoming sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.